You're with Julian on the brown note approaching Christmas and the rise of fascism combined with the Murdoch press and the Evangelical Christian. Lots of scary stuff happening in the world at the moment. I guess the modern iteration of it stems from Trump. But Trump stems from the Tea Party, which stems from Fox News. The Tea Party emerging at the end of the first decade of this century were a natural confluence on from Fox News from the early part of that decade, promoting this wildly lying, inaccurate version of the world because they wanted it, and mercilessly attacking everything that they didn't like. But I did a piece a while ago which was really interesting, and we're seeing mass protests around the world everywhere now. We're seeing them in Australia as well, even though they're mainly anti-lockdown protests, and they're not supported by anything more than a fraction of the people. But in the midst of every one of these are far-right groups that used to be fringe groups now that have 10,000 people standing with them. And these are troubling things. I did a piece ages ago. It was a really interesting article about how it wasn't Fox, it was 100 years before, how evangelical Christians in America set the tone for all of this. Because Charles Darwin came out with his Origin of the Species and presented a scientific view of the world which was at odds with the biblical view of the world. And in order to fight that, they basically came up with their own science and their own schools even, and their own curriculums that were anti-science. And they made a large part of the public inoculated from reason and science and logic, and to treat fact as a mutable thing, that they've got their facts, we've got ours. We don't like their facts, we're going to have ours. And that was from the late 1800s, where they set up this paradigm where you could fight science. I think a large part of it is media, right-wing media of Rupert Murdoch and modern right-wing politicians, because the first battles that we're seeing played out now were the climate change battles from the 90s, from the 80s and 90s, where people were promoting a fossil fuel industry-centric view of the world to protect those industries from the right of politics, attacking climate change as being this left-wing conspiracy. If you think that science is left or right-wing, you do not understand what science is, which is the weighing of available evidence in peer-reviewed studies and coming to the most likely answer, which can change if other evidence is presented. There is no bias in science. It is what is the most likely peer-reviewed answer to a question, which will not be a definite finite answer. It will be the best answer available at that time. And through the 2000s, we had this incredibly strong Murdoch press pursuing this notion that scientists were left-wing and being very anti-intellectual as well. Intellectuals are left-wing because most smart people are. The reason that there's not that many on the right that are prominent scientists and intellectuals, because they're not as smart, because they don't have you don't cherry pick science. You don't choose the scientific opinion of 2% of scientists, because that's not what science is. Science is the overwhelming consensus, because that's how it works. It's not saying I am choosing this scientist because I want to, and I'm working backwards from what I already believe to pick a science that agrees with me, because you are then dismissing 98% of scientists. You are being anti-science in that first place. So I think the anti-vax movement was analogous to the anti-climate change movement. The anti-vax movement started in the late 90s. The very strong Murdoch press, anti-climate change action, purely, even though Rupert Murdoch himself is well aware that climate change was real 20 years ago, they needed to protect their industry buddies and their neoliberal mates in their oil companies. So they ran a disinformation campaign. But unfortunately, at the same time, there was this anti-vaccination group moving up through the ranks. And who knew that we would have a virus that took over the world? It wouldn't have even happened had COVID not happened. So I think the world was being primed. It's close to Christmas. I think the world was being primed to reject science. And this crushes me because it's almost like the modern politician has gone from, on the right of politics, has gone from attacking science to standing behind science. The last people whose opinion you should not take as verbatim truth are medical practitioners and scientists, the overwhelming consensus of them. Don't believe politicians. I don't. I don't do this channel because I believe politicians. But two groups I do believe in are medical practitioners and scientists who know a lot more than I do and you do about these issues. They aren't politicians. Yet we've now got a group of people that regard them again as the enemy. Just the same as the people that were against the Darwinists regarded them with, distrust and fear as the enemy. They are scientists. They're telling us the world as it is. They're giving us their expert opinion of the best possible course of action to take at the moment. And we've got people like the right wing of politics in Australia, where Scott Morrison's got an appealing to the fringe of right politics written in his DNA. And lots of people in his party that are outright calling for insurrection, despite the fact that they are the government. They are asking for George Christensen, all these people are in government. They are the government. Their policies are the things that they're protesting. It's like they are trying to make out that there's this left-wing conspiracy going on when they're the actual government, literally in power. So it's actually a much more dangerous paradigm than I've probably covered before, because when fascism rises, it's not because 90% of the people in the world, or in Italy or in Germany, are massive fascists. When Italy turned fascist and when Germany turned fascist, near 50% of their populations were completely the opposite. Communism was massively popular in Italy and Germany. In fact, when Hitler took over and annulled any future democracy in Germany, the largest sitting party, I believe, in Germany was the Communist Party. These things are fractional. We've seen with Trump winning something like 60,000 votes more than Hillary Clinton across 3 states, won him an election. We saw Brexit being won by less than 2%. And we're seeing a lot of a fragmenting of society where very, very dangerous views are very cleverly moved. I've got friends that are anti-vax and they fit into one category. Usually attractive over 35-year-old women who are quite into wellness and yoga. And they are marching alongside genuine neo-Nazis who are using this to their own ends. They are smuggling themselves into much larger groups of people when their aims would have been considered aberrant. The trouble is these rabbit holes that people go down, they end up finding themselves more agreeable to these extreme right-wing positions than you would have ever believed that someone who's your friend could ever be, but it will happen. And that's what's scaring me. Fascism doesn't arrive because 99% of the people are right-wing. It arrives because they've manufactured a way to get into power and destroy the other 50% of people. And look at how the American elections are so polarized. We have Donald Trump, genuinely a possible dictator in America, winning fractional elections and then losing by millions of votes, but also it wouldn't have taken that much in those states for them to have gone the other way as well. And when you've got people putting the pressure on, like Cambridge Analytica targeting, I think they targeted 300,000 voters when Trump won, to get him over the line by bombarding them with extremely targeted advertising. The same in Brexit. And when you've got politicians, trying to wind back voting rights in Australia, the right are just so slavish to anything that the Republican Party does in America, who should have been labelled an extremist organisation ages ago. That they try to introduce voter ID laws in this country as well. All these things are designed to stop the left-hand side of politics voting, or to dissuade them, or to put the fear of God in them if they turn up at a polling booth. And the impacts could be very, very strong. I think we're entering in an era where fascism is possible. And America had a very near miss. People can joke about the riots in the Capitol, but there is no doubt that Donald Trump would accept a dictatorship in America. More than 50% of Republican Party people who support the Republican Party said that they would support Donald Trump taking over the country in undemocratic means because they don't agree with the vote. So these are really troubling times. We're seeing all throughout Europe, we're seeing these thousands and thousands of people protesting, and these previously very hardline neo-Nazi groups who are now claiming to be freedom groups. The last thing that neo-Nazis or far-right groups believe in is freedom, as has been proven over and over again whenever they've got in power. So this is a really dangerous time in human history. Trump is just a bellwether for this. I really hope he fades from view, but we've had the Republican Party acting as an obstructionist, right-wing extremist organisation for 15 years nearly. So happy times this Christmas. Happy Christmas.